Hello, my name is Florian Nuţă, and I'm professor at Danubius University from Galaţi in Romania. I am deeply involved in research activities dealing with environmental economics. For many years now, I've been interested in sustainable development and how we, the humankind, can harm less the nature and the ecological environment that we have and still be able to develop and keep a certain standard of living. My presentation today will be related to economic and social features influencing the environmental quality. Specifically, I will talk more about urbanization, urban features, and how the urban areas and urban regions can be sustainable and can also ensure the citizens' standard of living. It is almost trivial to discuss today about climate change, environmental damage, pollution, biodiversity loss, because we are all full of news about these issues of modern world and about environmental degradation that affects our lives day by day, our health, and our hope for a better future. All these concepts are describing the way nature is affected by human activities, and all around the world, the local governments, the national bodies and organizations, the international associations discuss and try to settle environmental issues and to target climate change mitigation. However, there are a lot of features that affect ecological quality and put under scrutiny the planet's capacity to support humankind. In one of my recent papers, I have discussed about urbanization and several economic and social features that have implications upon environmental degradation. Because we have to discuss about urbanization, as urbanization is a very critical concept for our existence, and altogether urbanization is somehow a standard for performing, for developed society, for transition from rural settlements to urban cities and big agglomerations. This paper I was talking about is related to urbanization and tries to assess several targets and several green options for making urban areas more green and to mitigate carbon dioxide emissions. Several findings in this paper are quite interesting and deserve to be observed and further investigated. One of these paper findings includes the matter that there is a negative and statistically significant relationship between renewable energy production and economic growth. Well, this finding might be due to the fact that renewable energy production is not keeping the pace with economic growth, and or those countries selected in the panel, which by the way are European developing economies, have already reached their renewable energy production potential. It might be the case. Another interesting finding is that there is a significant relationship between renewable energy production and environmental degradation. This is quite obvious, and many previous research found evidence about this relationship between renewable energy and carbon emissions or environmental quality. And this is the case because many decision makers are trying to transform this transition from fossil fuels and traditional energy towards renewables, because those evidences that renewable energy production and consumption, of course, it's greener and help us mitigate the climate change issues. And returning to urbanization, another finding is that we found evidence for a negative and statistically significant relationship between renewable energy production and urban population, which means that increasing urban population tends to conduct to a decreasing renewable energy production. Now, this is very important and needs much attention. We thought about several reasons for this finding, this result. One of the reasons might be that those countries are really dependent on fossil fuels for feeding their economic growth, and not only economic growth, but also households consumption, population mobility, industry, and so on, because we are talking about urban areas and an increasing urban population. Now, the urban areas are developing further, and even there are some regions around the world with some gaps in developing their urban areas. The fact is, worldwide speaking, the urban areas are developing fast, and most of the times we consider urban development as a performance indicator, as I said before, for the standard of living that it offers and for the social development that comes together with it. This is quite easy to follow and argue about, because urban areas means better jobs, better social and cultural environment, better education, better health services, better opportunities for developing personally and entrepreneurially. But of course, all these facilities and commodities for the citizens are coming together with several costs and things to think about it. Because most of the times, many urban areas and many urban regions all around the world, whatever the development of the country it is, struggles and tries to find the answers for several environmental issues, such as pollution, emissions, all kinds of emissions. Even we are talking about particulate emissions or greenhouse gases, biodiversity loss, waste management issues, and others. These are critical things, and of course needs to be taken into consideration, even if some developing countries are still ignorant about it, and because they have a lot of other issues, social and economic, to think about and to tackle first, such as poverty, social inequalities, unemployment, deep structural gaps between them and more developed countries, and so on. But still, we need to think very seriously about urbanization and to have a systemic way of thinking, putting together also economic, social, and environmental priorities, because they all have to come together and not treated separately. Talking about the impact of urbanization upon environmental quality, or if you want, environmental degradation, in the empirical literature are two major visions regarding this relationship between urbanization and environment. Well, the first vision, the first discussion related to this impact of urbanization upon environment is that urbanization have an impact on environmental quality, and of course, along with all its features, is responsible for environmental degradation. This is mainly because we have to consider that transforming a rural area into an urban one is taking a lot of impactful activities involving all the environmental degradation from biodiversity loss, land use, and so on, to pollution, emissions, wastes, and others. However, depending on the stage of this process, the environmental impact is less harmful. Some scholars are saying that after a certain threshold, the urbanization as a process ceases to be harmful for the environmental quality. And moreover, after the threshold is reached, the urbanization helps recovering the environmental damage. Now, the arguments for this vision and for this approach is that at later stages of development, urbanization is coming together with high innovation, green technologies, more efficient technologies in terms of energy usage, less connection with industrial facilities and secondary industry especially. And scholars consider that after urbanization reaches later stages of development, the citizens are more responsible and adopt more environmental friendly behavior. The second vision, the second major vision, because these visions may be split in several other research directions, but the second major vision is that urbanization harms the ecological environment, whatever the stage of it. Now, the logic of this vision is that even at later stages, the urbanization is affecting in a negative way the environment. That is because several features are intensely connected with urban areas, and they are still affecting the ecological environment. These features could be related to transportation, population migration, population growth, access to economic facilities and economic growth, of course, energy intensity, infrastructure development, household consumption, and of course, all kinds of waste, solid waste, water. Now, both visions are saying about negative impacts of urbanization upon the environment. However, the first one is saying that we might reach a certain stage in urban development where beneficial features such as renewable energy, green development options, innovation might help us mitigate the environmental issues and ensure a sustainable urban development. Of course, we have to take into consideration all these aspects, but we have to be attentive to statistics also, because it is estimated by the International Energy Agency that about 70% of the energy-related world greenhouse gases are coming from urban areas. So when we connect energy with urban development, we see that about 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from this interconnection, which is a major challenge, and it's a major challenge for both urban planners and also for energy industry. The research results itself are quite interesting because they are also showing some trends in urban development in connection with ecological degradation. For instance, it is relevant to observe that some national economies succeeded decoupling heavy industrial activities from urban areas. This development switch must be understood in a historical context, of course, because there are a lot of European emerging economies, especially from the eastern part of the continent, but not only, that had such development patterns where the industrial development and industrial growth was strictly connected with urban growth and development of major cities. Why is that? Because heavy industrialization in the 50s or in the 60s, in the last century, was connected to major cities for a very specific purpose, because these cities were the demographic pool for employment in all the economic development and industrialization. And of course, it brought high pollution, gas emissions, and biodiversity loss. It is important to say that some of these countries succeeded to make the transition possible, but they are still struggling to cope with standards, with climate change targets, and at the same time to ensure the economic output for the welfare of their citizens. Talking about several targets for making urbanization work, and making urban areas good, environmentally speaking. Three of these targets are the decoupling of heavy industrial activities from urban areas. Another target would be innovation, investing in innovation and ecological regeneration of cities. And of course, one of the most important and most popular, both for scholars and for decision makers, the transition towards renewable energy for fueling economic activity and urban life. Now, it has to be said that all these targets are not overnight targets, because, for example, the transition towards more renewable energy sources, a mix of energy consumption where the renewables are dominant, cannot be taken overnight. It has to be taken step by step. And one of the steps is to increase the energy efficiency also before phasing out coal and other fossil fuels, of course. For the concluding remarks of my presentation, I would say that the new urbanization patterns based on innovation, a new energy mix, and without inequalities in terms of access to urban life facilities and opportunities to have a better life and standard of living is most important for decision makers and for urban planners, because it is important to mix together, as I've told you previously, the economic targets, the social welfare, and the environmental quality, because they are all important and it cannot be taken one without the other. Thank you. This was my presentation. I am open for more details, more discussions, and for further collaborations, opportunities on topics related to urbanization, renewable energy, energy economics, sustainable development, and so on. You are welcome to visit my work ID page and to write me emails at the address available on screen right now. Thank you.